Yeah, new book haul, and I'm sicker than a sick dog. I got this. The back quote I just read, and I absolutely hate it. The back quote says, "The Labyrinth of Solitude is essential to an understanding of Mexico, and by extension, Latin America and the Third World." All in favor of banning the phrase Third World? Say aye. You're a piece of shit. Anyway, by Octavio Paz. Last time my dad texted me and said, "Oh, you say it Nietzsche." If that's the facts, that's the facts. I'm still going to struggle every time I bring it up in conversation. Okay? Sorry. I'm trying. If somebody wants to inform me about this one, Pops in his liberal arts education there probably don't know about this guy. Welcome to America. We don't read about, what's he? The Third World. And then we got this one, also from the Third World. The Sublime Object of Ideology. Yo, working through the new preface, which was... Dude, look at me. I didn't say preface, and I'm geeked. I think this is 2008. Yeah, so a new preface that was written for this book in 2008. Tried reading that at 4:30 a.m. today. And it was hard. I don't really struggle with reading too often. Nietzsche, for example. Pretty complex, convoluted. Philosophy seems to be that way. I don't really struggle too much. But this one, I love listening to this guy talk. Slavoj Zizek. Y'all know him. Y'all know the voice. Y'all know the... He's a good man. I fuck with him, man. He's cool. I also got this from the thrift. This is a poetry compilation book called Return of the Goddess. It just has a bunch of cool pictures in it and stuff. My wife and I like to collect these type of books, you know. Just cool different little stuff in there with the poems, and it tells a cutie little story. And then this is the piece de, resistance. We have the olive oil companion. Now, if anybody knows anything about me in 2024, olive oil is my best friend. That's me every day. Sniffing olive oil, tasting olive oil, drinking it straight out of the fucking bottle. Olive oil is medicine. So yeah, that's my book haul. Current update on the last book haul. American Psycho is really, really well written, and I'm really enjoying reading it because it's constantly in the back of my mind that there's a lot of people my age and older and younger that, idolize Patrick Bateman as a conception. Damn. God, G-H. Anyway. Yeah, it's been really interesting to read that. And kind of the thing that I'm really focused on is the way that they can kind of... When I say that, I mean like Patrick Bateman fanboys. Excuse me. The way that they can kind of compartmentalize and ignore the racism, the homophobia, the sexism, and I also absolutely love the way that virtue signaling is referenced and done within the dialogue that's in the book. It's a very descriptive book. It's very like, oh, and he was wearing a Burberry trench coat with a Cristobal Balenciaga and a bunch of stuff like that, and very like everybody knows that beginning scene of where he's like, I think we need to help the gays and also figure out how to stimulate economic growth without that type of stuff, and kind of the way that the character reacts to that type of stuff from other people in New York who are obviously virtue signaling and obviously talking out of their ass about something that nobody cares about, and just the way that that is like put together in the book. It really, I think it's healing for me to read it, because that's kind of like been the biggest problem I've had in the last like probably 5 or 6 years, is dealing with a lot of like hatred towards myself and my view of the world, but also seeing other people's view of the world and noticing how superficial it is, and not really understanding how those two things intersect, and how my view of the world is very like specific to me and nuanced towards my own personal view of the world, and how you can be really like in a way like you can be very sociopathic with the way that you approach other people's view, because I think a lot of the time we want to like look at the that's crazy. We want to look at the way that other people are and approach it as something that we can bring them closer to where we are, which is the best, which is the ideal that we want to have and hold. And reading American Psycho, I think it's really an interesting thing, because last year at this time I read Dolores Claiborne by Stephen King. I almost said Michael King. I don't know who Michael King is, but if you're out there, I love you. And that was a cool story, because that was somebody that, without spoiling it, that was somebody who's not necessarily a good person, but also isn't a perfectly evil person like Patrick Bateman. And Patrick Bateman is a perfectly evil person. And I think that that's a contrast that I'm having a cool time examining, because it's like, how does this stuff all fit into like actual life? Because obviously Patrick Bateman is a serial killer. And if you don't know Dolores Claiborne, it's a Stephen King book, and she's the main character, so fill in the blank if you want. But it's been cool to really examine like murder, for example, and how that sits in our society, and how that affects our day-to-day life and how we live. Because the way that we see murder and the way that we interact with death on a grand scale, Philosophy Tube video recently about death was a phenomenal video. The twist in the middle, tell me I ain't see it coming. All right, I saw it coming. Anyway, they talk about when you can ignore death and what it means with your own personal life, you can ignore it on a grand scale. And I think that this goes back to what I was saying about people being able to compartmentalize when it comes to somebody that is as on surface level, as aspirational as somebody like Patrick Bateman, who lives in New York City, and $2,000 a month health club memberships and $500 dinners every night, and different women everywhere, and doing all and getting away with anything and everything. But when you can ignore the evils of somebody, and you can ignore maybe like their shortcomings, or not even their shortcomings, but the things that they deliberately do that go against a status quo that has become the status quo for a reason. Like, the reason we don't murder everybody all the time is because we've all developed in this moral way of where we're just like, okay, murder is not okay. Like, we should probably work to extend human life rather than actively work towards ending it, which is like, not everybody really lives in that way, or, even shops that way, or, people wear Nike all the time. You know what I'm saying? People want to wear all these big ass brands that support terrible shit, and they don't see it as really impactful because, we live in a world where everybody thinks their vote doesn't count, where everybody thinks that they're irrelevant and they need to be whatever. And so we can ignore that. And in turn, we ignore the death that can happen to ourselves, and we don't live our lives very fully, and we live trying to be like Patrick Bateman. And that's why you have a lot of kids. My wife's cousin was here a few months ago, and I was talking to her about her boyfriend, and she says that her boyfriend, her ex-boyfriend, this whole fucking thing, but is a Patrick Bateman super fan. And it's like, damn, don't you realize that he's homophobic, racist, misogynist. Oh, and he murders people. He kills people. Like, that's his whole thing. And the whole movie, American Psycho, I won't speak towards, all the themes and everything in this book because I'm not done. I'm probably, like, a little less than halfway through. Excuse me. The whole theme is about somebody being perceived as less than. You know what I'm saying? As he can sit there in the bar and say, I want to cut your arms off and play with them or whatever. And the bartender just looks through him because she doesn't give a fuck. Because he might be saying something crazy, but at the end of the day, what's his crazy versus somebody else's? Because when he says, oh, it don't matter, it's just a rich guy in a white tie or whatever. But if a crackhead came in here and said that, like, that's on the news. Even if crackhead just leave, that's on the news. But it's this way that we can, like I said, ignore death. And we can ignore everything that's not what we want. But then we might turn around and look at our own friend circle and say, oh, I don't like the opinion that he has, or I don't like the way that she is always trying to work against what I'm saying or whatever. And you might cut people out, and you trying to get everything down to its purest form. And like I said, you want everybody to really come towards you and where you're at. And I think that's really, like, I don't know, for me, that's how I can sum up, like, my current experience with that book, American Psycho, because it's just very, like, it's very interesting to read a lot of this stuff and know the way that a lot of, especially young kids who are impressionable and don't really want to know these things yet, or aren't taught these things, and they're legislating that they're not taught about these things, and they go and they interact with media that has Christian Bale in it. Christian Bale's a handsome dude. That's a Batman. That's one of the Batman guys. They pick handsome guys to play Batman. You know what I'm saying? So, like, you have them play this serial killer, and people can't see past it. It's the same thing that they did with Jeffrey Dahmer a few years ago, which is even worse. And I won't watch that shit or interact with no Menendez brothers shit and all this monster bullshit they always want to pull up, because they profiting off of people's trauma. And that's the thing, is that you put a handsome kid in there and you say, okay, now we're going to tell this story because this story has meaning and matter and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, of course it does. Of course it does, because it's a microcosm of the real death and destruction and murder and the perspectives that we have towards each other and all that stuff. And if you're into that sort of true crime thing, I want to ask you, like, why are you into it? Because I know that, excuse me, my wife used to be heavily into it, and then we had a conversation about it, and I was like, what are you interacting with this for? And, of course, you get past that little first instincts of, oh, yeah, I just like it, it's interesting, or whatever. And you get to the base of it, and it's like, really, she has this fear, being a woman in American society, that you always got to walk with she has pepper spray on her thing with the key between the fingers like this in case somebody runs up on, and that's all valid stuff. Self-defense, all that stuff is all valid, because we do live in a very dangerous society, right? But you get to the root of it and you realize that a lot of this true crime interest, and by association, in a way, this interest in somebody like Patrick Bateman, you see that the root of it is that you want to confirm the biases that you have, which are, they show themselves as anxieties, but they're really biases. You want to confirm them, and you look to find comfort in, if you're 14 years old and you watch American Psycho and you see him peel the chemical peel and do the crunches, and he's watching horror movies and he's fucking hookers and he's having sex with this girl, this guy boyfriend or girlfriend, or however you want to spin this stuff. However you want to spin this stuff, you are confirming your bias. You're confirming the bias of rich people get away with whatever they want to do. Rich people can do anything. Sexy people can do anything. Somebody who's handsome that can go and have this guy's girlfriend or take her to dinner here or go there, that is okay. It is okay to go out on a date with a girl who's completely drugged out of her mind, who's completely on this and that substances. It's okay to drink constantly. A lot of drinking in this book. Lots of, I was nursing my second JB on the rocks when Carruthers walked. Lots of stuff like that. And you want to engage with these things, yes, but you also got to know where your biases are at. If you're watching a lot of true crime shit, the onus is on you to really be like, okay, why am I watching this? Am I watching this because I think that there's value in the story and I should learn how this story happened so that I can apply it to my own life? Or are you caught on the shock factor of the, oh, well, this guy was gay and he was taking pictures of people and murdering them. And, you know, that's not even to mention your own personal moral, responsibility to not interact with something to where all the producers and the creators of this show reached out to the families of the people that were impacted and they didn't comment and they didn't have anything to do with the telling of how their sons died, how their sons were murdered by this guy who's become a cult hero. You feel what I'm saying? And it's been so valuable for me to really interact with it because a lot of the emotions and a lot of the things that I think and feel while reading this book are things that I've thought and felt for a long time that I couldn't really put to words until I had a more thorough example of, you know, when you can sit there and read it and kind of pore over pages and it might take you some time to get through some things. You have more time to formulate your opinion. When you're watching it on a screen and you're watching a guy do crunches and push-ups and on the elliptical and out to dinner and fancy suits and all these business cards and everything, you're not really responding. You're like reacting. You know, responding is more like I'm, reading and I'm going to think about it and I'm going to look over here and think about it and look over there and think about it. But a movie, you're just watching. And you're just taking it all in. And it's interacting with the... Well, I gotta stop talking. It's interacting with the biases that you already hold and these preconceived notions that you already hold. But you're not giving yourself time to really acknowledge that. So, you can maybe change it or challenge it if need be. And I think that especially when you have young kids that are 14 or, 15 or 16 that interact with American Psycho. And this is not me, I hope watching, that this is not me trashing this movie or the writers or even Christian Bale or any of these people. I'm not trashing any of these people because it's a work of art. It's a great movie. I like the movie. It's cool. Like, of course, I like the movie. I'm reading the damn book. You know how this society works now. Now it's based on the book by da-da-da-da-da, and I got to go find da-da-da-da-da, not other way around how it once was, right? And that's, that's not for this sort of video. This is a different thing. But I think that you have these young kids interacting with this shit through streaming services or however they're watching it, and they don't know about what bias is, really. They might know bias is what the author says when he writes a passage, right? Yeah, of course, because you can answer a written question on a pop quiz in high school about what bias is. That doesn't necessarily mean that you know how it affects you personally in your day-to-day life. And, I think that there's a lot of thought and talk around political bias and even not like just regular everyday walking down the street there, oh, it's a black guy, let me lock my doors type of bias, and how it's kind of ineffectual in a way. And I don't actually agree with that. I don't think that people have biases and they don't affect how they live their day-to-day life. I think it entirely can change a person's life by acknowledging that they have certain biases that if they were to have to talk, like if Patrick Bateman, for example, like I had mentioned that opening scene of the movie. I don't know if it's an opening scene or if it's one of the opening scenes, or where they're sitting and he's talking about all these things that the world needs to do and virtue signaling to everybody, and oh, I love everyone, I'm so knowledgeable, I watch TV. And there's a certain level of like, would he come out and tell people, like, yes, I know he does in the movies, like, oh, I'll cut your arms off or whatever, but would he come out and say, like, no, gay people disgust me, I hope they all die, black people disgust me? No, he doesn't say that. He doesn't say that. He might say 2, 3, 4, 5 different other things that really conflict how he actually lives in his day-to-day life, and I think that seeing that on the screen can show you as the viewer that that's not right, and that's not how you want to live your life, you know. But a lot of the problem is that you have these 14-year-old kids and like, oh my god, big tits, big dicks everywhere, oh my gosh, cocaine, drugs, alcohol, like, I'm 14, everything is new in life and I think it's amazing and I want to do all, and it's just like, but you're forgetting he's a murderer and he's homophobic and he's misogynistic and he's racist and he's also just plain rude and he's egotistical and he's self-centered, and that's what this character was designed to be. But when you are too young and you're not educated in a you know, a wide variety of matters, or maybe you hyperfixate onto a certain genre, like my wife once did with the true crime. My mom does it too. My mom's been watching true crime documentaries every single day since I can remember. Of you know what I mean? My mom and I are not even on no good terms right now. We're trying to fix that, so y'all say a prayer for me or something. But you know, she been watching the How I Almost Got Away with This, if you know that one, or the Investigative Network channel, and there's all these how I did it, who I killed, jealous murderers, and these are all true stories. These are all true murder stories and true crime stories, right? So it's like, are you getting caught up in the awe? Or are you trying to learn and trying to change your perspective and see like, oh, that's how this dude's fucked up? But when you're too young, or you don't engage with this media actively and you're passively watching, you know, that's why for me, something I heard a long time ago from a fashion lady talking about like actually creating clothes, right? And she says, if you're watching something or listening to something or whatever, you know, you're interacting with media, if it is not causing you to take out a notebook and start writing or drawing or whatever, that is not your inspiration. That is entertainment. So a lot of kids have confused, and a lot of people in general have confused their entertainment with their inspiration. And so you have these dynamics now where you have these kids who are becoming inspired by these super problematic figures because the media knows that it's provocative. Somebody murdering another person is provocative when we live in a world where the agreed upon status quo is we don't kill each other. It's provocative to see a sexy guy with the fucking lifestyle and the money and the women and the. It's provocative to see that as a 14-year-old kid of like, oh my God, he gets away with everything, because you don't see the nuances. You don't see the subtleties of him trying to talk and people talking over him, or him saying something and his girlfriend not even recognizing what he's talking about, or the whole like joke of the movie between the dynamic between him and Paul Owen is that Paul Owen doesn't even know who the fuck he is. And that dynamic is played on a lot more in the book. And that's something that I think I recognize. And I'm like, wow, that's really, really interesting. This guy says hello to a lot of people and they call him things that aren't his name. Like the running joke in the movie is Marcus Halberstam is who he's confused with. It's the same. It's obviously the same in the book with Paul Owen. But anyway. You have these kids that look at that and they don't even recognize that that's going on. And I keep saying kids, but I should just say people, because I did just make reference to my mom. My mom is 49. You're 49 years old. You're gonna You feel what I'm saying? You're going to have to be active if you're that age, because you're becoming a more substantial part of the patriarchy as it's conceptualized in our day-to-day lives. Not necessarily like my mom is not part of the ruling class with the 1%, and all the 99.999% of the wealth in the world is owned by my mother, right? But, you know, as you age and as you start to become an older woman or an older man or an older they, them, or whatever I should be saying, y'all could fuck me up if you need. When you start to age, you start to have people that look to you for knowledge and that look to you for, you know, whatever, that comes to you and asks questions. And something that I really, and I'm not trying to put my mom down by using her as an example in this case, but I just know she loves true crime and that's on topic. But now I'm going to shift and use my dad as an example. If they both watch this video, shit, these two people are going to have two different reactions to what the fuck I'm talking about. Okay. So, my dad I really admire him because sometimes I'll ask him a question and we're different in the way that we live our lives. You know, he's a guy that he wants to work a job and he works a job that he loves to work at, and he wants to go in and do his thing and go home and play his mobile games and kick it and, you know, eat good food and love his family and shit like that, you know? And so sometimes I'll ask him questions that pertain to my sort of artistic life of, you know, basically misery. I mean, let's keep it 1,000. This life is very hard to live if you are like, oh, I'm not going to vibe with the system, man. And so I ask him a question and sometimes he doesn't know. And that's what I'm trying to say about you interacting with your biases and how they maybe impact you in life, is that if you can't be like my dad, right? And you can't say, I don't know, when somebody asks you a question, then you probably don't watch movies or read books with the proper amount of scrutiny. Because there's going to be times when you might interact with something in a book where you're struggling to understand it. And you need to be able to look yourself in the face and say, damn, I'm not really understanding this at the level that I want to. So you have to work harder for it, right? And so if you walk away from a movie or a true crime or whatever, and the only thing that you're thinking is what you're going to watch next, you got to stop interacting with that type of media. You got to stop interacting with, with the type of stuff that's making you just want more of the same stuff. Because that's how I know, and that's how you should know, that it's playing on a more primal, more bias, more preconceived notion aspect of your brain versus that forward-thinking evolutionary part of your brain that wants you to evolve and become a stronger, more well-rounded person. You know, and is it wrong to be entertained sometimes? No, hell no. I be playing NCAA 12 for fucking 6-hour sessions sometimes because I'm just funny. I don't know. I love the numbers and the stats. I be playing Dynasty and I like the numbers. So this is a book video, so that might have caught some people. Damn. Oh, almost fell over. Any hoot and hollering. Shout out to my mom for that phrase. I love my mom. I love my dad, right? So thank you to them for being helpful examples for what the fuck I'm talking about. Rambling ideologies. Anyhow. Yeah, man, that's where I'm at. You feel me? That's my book haul. Sublime Object of Ideology by self-described conservative communist fucking SZ. That's what we gonna say. To forgive my dad for correcting my Nietzsche. Alright? See me saying that in the video twice? Getting it correct? Not saying, oh, I don't know. See? I'm pretty good. As well as The Labyrinth of Solitude by Octavio. Not catching me slipping. As well as The Olive Oil Companion. I never peeped the author. Judy Ridgeway. Shout out to you, Judy. Shout out to Healthy Girl Olive Oil as well, based in like Delaware, like Delmarva area. That's just random. That's just off the cuff. As well as Return of the Great Goddess, edited by Burleigh Mutén. I met a guy named Burleigh this summer. Burleigh Sunflower. Oh, I just exposed his full government. That's his real name.